Hello and welcome to Families Made Differently. This is Bex Baker, your host. Today we are joined with Laura and I would love her to share her story. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Laura and I became a mum a few years ago now, 6 years ago now, via a permanence order, which is, I think it's a Scottish specific thing, where a decision has been made that a child is not going back to their birth family for their care, but there's maybe a reason that it's not thought that adoption is in their best interests. But it is thought that a permanent, well, we know from the research that a permanent family is the best thing for these kids. And that is how I came to be here.
That's new for us on the podcast, so that's exciting. How did you come to choosing to become a mum through a permanency order?
We just don't think of ourselves as different from any other family. I just didn't give birth to my son, and that is really the only thing that is different about us.
We're just made differently. You're
just
not
made
different.
Differently. Yeah, we're not different. I never saw my future not having a family, not having children. But the whole way through growing up, even as early as 10 years old, I never necessarily thought that that meant that I would ever be pregnant or give birth to my kids. It kind of evolved over time. So when I was young, I said that I was going to move to Africa and open an orphanage. And then I got older and it was Vietnam or Cambodia. I was going to Asia to open an orphanage. In some ways, fostering and adoption then became a natural progression of that in more real world, realistic terms. When I met my husband, I was very open and clear from the start that I didn't necessarily think that I wanted to have biological children. It was never that I didn't want children. It was never that I didn't want to expand our family that way. We moved around and then it was getting to the point in our lives that we were going to be settled in the one place for a while, and we were like, we need to think about this properly and look at this and look at how we're going to build our family. And at that point, we'd never heard of permanency. We just got in touch with our local council and asked what are the options, and permanency was the one that stood out to us as the one that made the most sense for us.
Great. And did you feel God was calling you into that?
I think it's one of these kind of bizarre things that I don't know that I necessarily felt that it was God or God telling me to do that, but when you hear that story, you see God in that, right? It was just always there as part of me and part of how God made me, and all of that was preparing me for this. There wasn't like a lightning moment and God was like, this is how you're going to build your family or anything like that, but through that story you can see that that was very much what God was preparing me for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. How has permanency shaped your family?
I mean, it's built our entire family. That is how it has formed our family.
What does your family look like now?
So our son is now 16. We made a decision early on that we wanted to make sure that someone got a family, became part of a family who maybe wouldn't have got a chance otherwise. And that was some of the reason that we chose permanency rather than adoption. Mm-hmm. We know that in Scotland, actually, in terms of adoptive parents, there's often more parents than there are children in Scotland. Mm-hmm. We knew that permanency had the potential to pose different challenges. We knew that people that were maybe coming to fostering adoption from a place of infertility maybe would struggle a lot more with those challenges in a way that us having made this plan A of how we were going to build our family wouldn't. That was a lot of the reason that we chose permanency. Yeah, so our son was 10 years old when he joined our family, so that is a big change for everyone in the situation. It's funny, we went to our panel review, so because we are still technically foster carers, although we are just mum and dad, we still have to go through the checks and things that foster carers have, and that means going back to panel every 3 years to get your registration reapproved. And when we went back to panel the first time, which I think was actually just after a year, they made some comment or question about, do I feel whole now? Like somehow my son had completed me. And I've always felt, I said, it's not that we had a Micheal-shaped hole, we had a Micheal-shaped extra. That was why we chose this, which just kind of came to mind when we were talking about shape. It was like, it's like, it wasn't that shaped hole, it was that shaped extra that we had and that let us expand our family that way.
Love that. What has been your favourite memory so far along your journey?
I have two that come to mind straight away. One is my husband and I baptising our son.
Oh, that's beautiful.
As a Christian parent, your child loving Jesus is the thing that you want for them most in the whole world. Because you know that whatever struggles, whatever they come up against in this life, that there's more. And the fact that they've embraced that more. And you've then also got this assurance as well that they're going to be okay, kind of no matter what happens. So I think that was yeah, that was really special. Just absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
And my other probably favourite memory was really, really early on. So it was the first time we took our son to church. We went in, my husband and I had been at the church before, so we knew a few people, and we took our son to meet the person that was taking the children's church. The first thing he said to them was, I was in foster care for 5 years and 8 days and now I've got my family. And do you know what was amazing was that she just responded, because she knew us really well, and she responded saying, I know, and what an amazing family it is. That's not someone who's ever been particularly involved in fostering, adoption, or anything like that, but that was just so affirming for him, because that was how he was feeling at that point, was just elated and really excited to have his family. And the fact that she was able to bring that kind of energy and positivity was just a moment to watch that you just kind of keep in your heart forever.
How has God been speaking to you through it?
I think in many ways, I don't know that the way that God has spoken to me has been much different from how I would imagine it is for any other parent. I think being a parent teaches you a lot about how selfish you are, teaches you a lot about your ability to love and how that just expands. It also definitely teaches you some patience. The other thing that I found is that it's probably brought a bit more balance to my life as well, particularly when he was younger and wanted to play lots of board games and spend time with us and things like that more than he does now as a proper little grown-up. I found that actually it was much easier to have work life and home life separation, because it meant when I was at home, I was fully engaged in that. I'd often brought work home with me and things like that in the past. So I think it actually really helped with my kind of work and non-work life balance too.
And have you experienced God's blessing?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I think just in the same way that God blesses us as families and parents, and a lot of that is the same things. It's actually, a lot of it is that love. It's that in our family, hilarity and dark humour with a bit of sarcasm thrown in as well, and that's just multiplied. It was there before, but it's definitely multiplied now.
Probably with age as well.
Absolutely. We've also seen how God's timing has been really incredibly in a lot of things. Our son has had contact with his birth mum since he turned 16, and actually, while that brought up lots of concerns and worries and things, because this wasn't someone that we had ever met and that our son hadn't seen for many, many years, it's been really clear that God's timing was very much in that. She was ready, he was ready. It's been a positive thing for them both.
What advice would you give someone starting their journey into fostering or adoption? I feel like you're kind of sitting right in the fence between the two, so I feel like you could speak into both sides. But
yeah, I think we are, and I think a lot of where we are is probably closer. No, it is. A lot of what we are is much closer to adoption than it is to fostering. Even just the fact that you know that this is permanent, and that's really important for the child as well as you. I think you need to be honest about your limitations. Honest. I think you need to be honest about what you can and can't cope with. And actually, it's okay to set that, and to say, one of the things that we found really hard at a few points was we occasionally would get a phone call from social work saying, look, we know it's not part of your registration, we know.
They're so cheeky, aren't they?
Yeah, but
Goodness.
But is there any chance? And we consistently said no, because it was not in the best interest of our son.
With requests like that, as soon as you let the door open just a little, they just push it wide open and just keep asking and just push the limits to a crazy amount.
We've also, I would say, seen some of the best aspects of social work. We had an amazing social worker that did our assessment and then was with us for a lot of our journey. But we also have had some fairly negative experiences and things with social work and stuff as well. And I think it's important to be honest about that. They are struggling. Health and social care in general is struggling, and potentially support is not going to be available at the times that you need it or want it. And I think that's a particularly important thing to think about if you're thinking about fostering, because there would be more support and things, is that the reality of the situation is that is not guaranteed and not always there. But on the flip side as well, thinking about going down the adoption line, it's also been really nice to know that we have that contact with social work through the years and things. We have been able to reach out at certain points where, even if that's just, do you know who we could contact about this thing, having easy access to training.
And support as well.
Yes.
As much as it is still not necessarily guaranteed. It's more,
Yes.
in theory, there.
Yes.
Whereas for us as adopters, we have 3 years post-adoption order of support with the council that the child came from, and then that's it. They kind of cut us off. They don't cut us off, but like then you move to your whatever council you're living in or residing in at the time, and then they take it on. You're kind of out of the system then, so to speak. So then the support is harder to get when you need it, or it's just a longer process to get it. But I guess when you're in the system through fostering, in theory it's there.
In theory it's there.
Not guaranteed,
in theory it's
but
there.
in theory it's there.
And one aspect that is there when you choose fostering is financial support as well. For us that was a reasonable consideration actually, but more just because it meant that one of us didn't have to work, which just gave us more flexibility. Now actually we were in a situation that my husband gave up work and was a full-time stay-at-home dad for almost 3 years in the end. Part of that was COVID related. Actually, just the fact of having that financial support would have meant that if there had been difficulties down the road, trauma doesn't just go away, and these children that have been through a lot can have problems 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, 20 years down the line. And knowing that at any point one of us could step back from work to be there and be at home if we needed to, and that was the best thing for our son to be able to do that, knowing that we would still have that income, that was a big consideration.
Yeah, well that is actually the end of my questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or
no, I don't think so.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
This was Families Made Differently, the podcast designed to share stories from Christians across the UK whose lives and families have been shaped by fostering and adoption. Please make sure you're following us on social media and make sure your notifications are turned on wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss the next one.